This evening, my friends, I believe, at least from my tradition, that the divine is calling us all to account, our nation to account, on this ground in front of the ICE office, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, to support Ansly Damus.
Protest was held Tuesday, September 18, 2018, for the latest victim of Judge Sessing's zero-tolerance policy for asylum seekers. Ansly Damus has been residing in Geauga County Jail for almost 2 years. Damus is the lead plaintiff in the case by the ACLU that features 1,000 others seeking asylum.
Over the past year, it used to be about 90% of parole seekers got parole, but over the last 18 months, that number has dropped to less than 5%, and in our region, it's 1 person in 160.
We cannot be right with the divine or with one another when we otherize and we demonize and we follow unjust orders and say, oh, I'm just following the rules.
During a speech on June 11, 2018, Jeff Sessions says that domestic and gang violence aren't enough to grant asylum if perpetrated by non-government agencies. However, Damus was threatened by a political candidate which qualifies as a government official. Feels that many refugees are abusing the asylum-seeking status.
They're just statistics to ICE. It's just another notch in their belt, another immigrant to be punished. Ansly has been granted asylum twice and should be free.
In a seminar that he was teaching a little over 2 years ago, he used as an example, but the seminar was on the subject of ethics. And so he used to discuss the topic as an example, a local political leader who was a thug who used gangs and terror to maintain his power. And on his way home from work a few days later, an armed gang that supported the thug, attacked Ansly, knocked over his motorcycle, lit it on fire, beat him severely, breaking several bones, and threatened him and his family with death. So he left the country, he fled, and he came to the United States.
We've been visiting Ansly each week since February. It's a very interesting experience because you don't get to see him in person. He's in a pretty dark, very, very dark room. You can't see his features, and he's on a camera and Skyped to you in a monitor, and you're in the same place. You're in a room that's probably not well lit, and there's people next to you talking to someone else, so you can't really hear each other well. It's a very demeaning type, dehumanizing environment as well. But let me tell you a little about Ansly. He's the poster child of what an asylum seeker should be. He's a loving husband, a father of 2. He's well educated, has lots of certifications, and he was a teacher teaching math, science, and ethics. He left behind a wife, 2 children, a father, a brother, and a sister. And we talked to him about that, and he says he misses them. He says he suffers without his family. He tells us he wants to feel the sun on his face and breathe the fresh air again. Ansly was unable to talk to his wife for about 18 months, as he cannot call internationally. He can make a phone call on their phone. He can't call internationally, only domestically. And no one can call him. He can't mail a letter internationally either, or receive one, so we've had to find workarounds for all these things.
Asylum seekers under the law are allowed to receive parole. They're allowed to be considered for parole so they don't languish in prison. They haven't broken any laws. They're entitled to remain free and come to court for their asylum hearings. Mr. Damus was never permitted an opportunity to be considered for parole, nor were any of the other literally 1,000 asylum seekers who've been detained in 5 designated ICE field centers for the past 2 years since the current administration has taken over. Asylum seekers who do not present a threat to society and who aren't a flight risk are entitled to be free. It makes sense. It doesn't waste taxpayer dollars, and it doesn't treat them like criminals because they're not. Instead of the individualized parole determination that the law entitles him to, the government simply checked a box. that's at flight risk. No reasoning, no nothing, which it again violates the law. He's in Geauga County, which you think of beautiful trees and maple syrup, and what a nice place with deer and all of that. He has not seen the light of day for 2 years literally. Well, it'll be 2 years literally next month. He is locked in a windowless suite of rooms. He's in a dormitory with 60 other people. There's literally no window. He does not know what the sky looks like. He doesn't know what the seasons are. We wouldn't keep an actual convicted person who had committed a crime and been adjudicated guilty that way. So he's not eating well. He's lost a lot of weight. His guards, who are pretty humane, they're decent people, actually, I don't think they were putting on a show for me. They actually coaxed him to eat. And they were supposed to come remove his tray, and he hadn't touched it, so they left it longer. And they came back again, and they said, why don't you just keep a little something off of it? They worry about him, but he's depressed and miserable, and this is very helpful to him. I think the federal government is trying to create disincentives to people coming to the United States, either lawfully or unlawfully. Mr. Damus is here completely lawfully, but they are not making it easy for him to be here intentionally. They're making his life miserable because they do not want people to come into our country, even when they come lawfully. There are 5 particular regions that used to routinely grant 90 to 95% of parole applications up until President Trump took power. After this administration took over, the statistics reversed. They're now denying the vast majority of petitions here in Ohio and in this ICE territory.
And he meets all the criteria and is still in jail going on 2 years. Racism becomes an obvious motive as diversity is one of white supremacists' greatest fear. Stay tuned for more updates on this case as it becomes available. Melanated Media News, where independent thinking is as simple as breathing.